Very much, Rizal, for that very warm and generous welcome. I'm so glad that this is the first time I'm appearing in person in the Golkar Institute. You've seen me virtually in the video, so I'm happy to confirm that I'm alive. So, there's an Arab proverb which says, he who speaks about the future lies, even when he tells the truth. Because as we know, there's so many surprises in the world all the time. So when I come to speak about a lecture about where the world is headed, in some ways I'm maybe telling you a lie. Because the world may change, right? Whatever I say may come untrue. Right? That's the danger of speaking of the future. You can't control the future. But at the same time, I have absolutely no doubt that over the next 10 years, the world will be shaken by an accelerating geopolitical contest between the United States and China. That's almost like a certainty over the next 10 years. And I guarantee you that your lives will be rocked by this contest in one way or another. And that's why, because our lives are going to be affected by this contest, we should try to understand it as best as we can. And that's why, as you know, I wrote my book, As China Won, to try and explain what was going on. So what I'll do today is that I'll try to divide my remarks into three parts and basically answer three questions. One is, what is this US-China contest all about? Number one. Number two, what are the implications for the rest of the world? And what are the threats and opportunities for us in ASEAN from the US-China context? So let me begin by answering the question, what is this US-China contest all about? And why am I so certain that the US-China contest will accelerate? And the reason why I'm so confident it will accelerate is because this contest is being driven by structural forces, right? Not by personalities. And one of the structural forces is what I call the iron law of geopolitics. And this iron law of geopolitics has been around for 2,000 years. Humanity doesn't change. It's been around for 2,000 years. And in this iron law of geopolitics says that whenever the world's number one emerging power, which today is China, is about to overtake the world's number one power, which today is United States of America, the world's number one power always pushes down the world's number one emerging power. This is an iron law. It operates all the time. And that's why I know that the next 10 years will be very rocky, because there's the incredible consensus in the Washington, D.C. establishment that the United States has only about 10 years to stop China. Because the United States knows that if it doesn't stop China, and if China becomes the number one economy in the world, everything changes. And so there's a sense of desperation in Washington, D.C., and also a determination to stop China at all costs. And what is remarkable is that you have an incredible bipartisan consensus on this in Washington, D.C. at a time
But the United States has never been as divided as it is today. In fact, the last time that the United States was as divided as it is today was the American Civil War of the 1860s. So, can you imagine that? 160 years ago was the American Civil War, and today the United States is as divided as it is then. Because I can tell you that the Republicans and the Democrats and the supporters of Trump and Biden don't agree on anything except one thing. It's time to beat up on China, which is remarkable in a divided country. And so it shows that personalities don't matter, parties don't matter. It's the iron law of geopolitics takes over. We must remain number one. But of course, the big question is, who will win in this contest? Will the United States win? Or will China win? And I wonder, maybe if you allow me, Parizal, let me ask a simple question. Please raise your hands. How many of you think that in this contest between United States and China, United States will win? Please raise your hands. 1, 2, help me count, Parizal. I count only 2. Okay? Only 2 of you think that the United States will win. How many of you think China will win? Wow.
I believe it.
No, but I can tell you, if you ask this question in many parts of the world, they will say United States will win. And by the way, I want to emphasize this. The United States is clearly the most formidable great power that the world has seen since human history began. We all talk about the Roman Empire and the British Empire. They were nothing compared to the strength of the United States today. Indeed, no other great power in human history has accumulated as much what I call comprehensive power as the United States has in so many spheres, in the economic sphere, in the military sphere, in the intellectual sphere, in the scientific sphere, in so many spheres. The United States is a formidable country. And at the end of the day, no other country has accomplished as much as what the United States has done. I mean, it's hard to believe the United States sent men to the moon in the 1960s, and no other country can replicate it, right? That's an illustration of how formidable the United States is. That's why in my book, Has China Won, I have a fictional memo to President Xi Jinping saying, never, never underestimate the United States of America. But at the same time, it would also be a mistake for the United States to underestimate China. Because China, at the end of the day, is still the world's oldest continuous civilization. Right? And I tell my American friends, you've only been around for less than 250 years. China has been around 4,000 years. And Chinese civilization has always demonstrated a strength and resilience that no other civilization has demonstrated for so long. And that's why, I'm 75 years old. I want to live to 85 because I want to see the biggest contest ever seen in human history. These are two formidable powers, and they are going to go all out to ensure that they don't get stopped by the other side. And in response to the question, who wins, it's important to understand just in case you think that this is going to be determined by how many aircraft carriers, how many jet fighters, that's all irrelevant. It's not a military battle. In fact, there's unlikely to be a war between the United States and China, because in a nuclear war, you don't have a winner and a loser. In a nuclear war, you have a loser and a loser. So the United States and China will go all out, but will avoid a direct war with each other, as by result they did in the First World War. United States and Soviet Union also avoided a direct war. But therefore, the most important indicator of which power will win will be determined not by guns and bullets, but by which society has the most dynamic internal society. Which society is more vibrant? Which society is more dynamic? And by the way, there's a very famous American strategic thinker, George Kennan, who in 1949 correctly predicted that the outcome of the contest between the United States and Soviet Union will be determined by which society has more spiritual vitality. Spiritual vitality doesn't mean religious vitality. It means which society has got people who are happy and thriving and dynamic. And of course, American society is in many ways very dynamic. Amazing society. It's the only society that can produce giants, right? Like Google and Amazon and Apple and overnight. And ChatGPT. So American society remains vital. But at the same time, as I said earlier, American society is also very divided. That's going to be a big challenge for the United States, and that's what will drag the United States back. And I can tell you that next year will be one of the most difficult years for the United States of America, because you have an unusual condition where a majority of Democrats don't want Biden to be the candidate. A majority of Republicans don't want Trump to be the candidate. But who will be the candidates? Biden and Trump. Amazing. Right? You can see this paradox, right? So, therefore, the internal divisions within the United States are becoming real and dangerous. And by the way, China also, as you know, this year is having a very difficult year. In fact, China's economy was supposed to grow comfortably at 5 or 6% this year. It will be a struggle. And clearly, China has made mistakes, like in its handling of the exit from COVID-19 that have in many ways slowed down China. So the reason I tell you this is that you must understand that why it's so difficult to predict who will win is that it will depend on internal dynamics within China, internal dynamics within the United States, which are unpredictable. And therefore it makes the contest very, very difficult to figure out. And then there will be amazing twists and turns, right? I'm confident that the contest will accelerate. That's a given. But it will twist and turn. And indeed, as you know, when Trump, the trade war was begun by Donald Trump, and after Trump lost the elections, when Biden won, Biden and Xi Jinping had a very good personal relationship. In fact, Joe Biden was the first American president to be elected with a pre-existing personal friendship with his Chinese counterpart, because Xi and Biden had met many times. So everyone thought, wow, things will improve. But guess what? The first 2 years, relations between US and China went down, even though Xi and Biden were friends. But luckily for them, Indonesia organized a G20 meeting in Bali in November last year. And thanks to President Jokowi's hospitality, finally Joe Biden met President Xi Jinping. So you should thank your president. But these are the twists and turns that will happen. Just to give you another example, after a good meeting in Bali, everyone thought that things would get better. And then one balloon appeared over the United States of America. And that one balloon was seen as a big threat to the United States of America. And I'm not exaggerating. American public opinion turned against China dramatically after one balloon. That's an example of a twist and turn that happens. That's why you can't predict how it's going to go. But certainly the contest will accelerate. Now, what are the implications, therefore, this is my second part, for the rest of the world? And it's important to understand that ASEAN countries will be under pressure from both sides, to two sides. And the pressures will come. And you might think, oh, well, maybe we can resist it. But I can tell you that even some of the major powers can't resist the pressures. Right? I'll tell you a story. In January 2020, I was in Davos, and I was on a panel, sitting on a stage like this, with my counterpart, who's a very senior British figure, very senior British figure. So I asked this senior British figure, January 2023, I noticed that there's a discussion within US and UK about whether or not UK can install Huawei in its telecommunications. And the senior British figure said to me, of course we will. He said, we have planted the GCHQ people. The GCHQ people are the people who control the signals intelligence for the British. He said, we planted our spies inside Huawei. We know what's going on. We have scrapped the Huawei software. We know it's safe. We will proceed with Huawei. So I said to the senior British gentleman, I said, come on, this is not a technical issue. This is a political issue. And the senior British gentleman said to me, you know how the British can be a bit arrogant sometimes? He said, Kishore, the United Kingdom needs the United States. Sorry, the United States needs the United Kingdom as much as UK needs the US. We can withstand the pressure. That was January 2020. By June 2020, boom, UK capitulated and had to ban Huawei. So I tell you the story that even a great power like UK succumbs to such pressures. And so we must be ready for similar pressures coming our way. But that's why it's very, very important over the next 10 years for the 10 ASEAN countries to remain united. Because if we get divided, we'll be under greater pressure. If we stay together, we will be able to handle these pressures. And so if you can, the Golkar Institute has one message to put across. The message must be we in ASEAN must stand together. And at the same time, the remarkable thing about this story, about the impact on the rest of us, is that in the United States still doesn't have a long-term strategy for managing this contest, whereas China has a long-term strategy, right? This is quite amazing when you consider that you were saying that you set up the Golkar Institute here in Indonesia. Which country has the largest number of strategic think tanks? It's the United States of America. Which country has the best universities in the world? It is the United States of America. Which country has the most renowned media channels in the world? The New York Times, the Washington Post, is the United States of America. Yet, even though the United States has so many strategic think tanks, it has no strategic thinking. Now, this is an amazing paradox when it comes to the United States and the rest of the world. Whereas China has systematically created interdependence with China, with the rest of the world. So, for example, China launched the Belt and Road Initiative to ensure that other countries would remain integrated with China as the contest evolves against the United States. And that's why, even though in the first Cold War, the United States got so many countries to join it in its contest against the Soviet Union, this time around, very few countries are enthusiastically supporting the United States. And that's a result of the Chinese strategy, and that's a result of the Chinese strategy of getting 140 countries to join the Belt and Road Initiative. So that's an example of strategic thinking on the part of China. So finally, what are the dangers and opportunities for us here in ASEAN? And as I indicated earlier, there's a danger of ASEAN being divided, the 10 of us. And as you know, among the 10 ASEAN countries, I'm not giving a big secret away when I say that some of us in ASEAN are closer to China, some of us in ASEAN are closer to the United States. I mean, as you know, Cambodia and Laos are probably closer to China than they are to the United States. And paradoxically, Vietnam is closer to the United States. I say paradoxically because the one country that has fought the biggest war against the United States is Vietnam, as you know. But even more paradoxically, the United States always says that this contest between the United States and China is a contest between democracy and autocracy, right? President Biden always says democracy versus autocracy. Now, which country is Joe Biden visiting next week? Vietnam. Vietnam is an autocracy, right? Now, I tell you that story to drive home one point. When countries say things, don't believe them. I mean, if this was a contest between democracy and autocracy, how can President Joe Biden go visit autocracy? He should be visiting a democracy, especially the biggest democracy in Southeast Asia, which is Indonesia. But he chooses to go to an autocracy because Vietnam is vital in the contest against China. So you see how this is how ASEAN's got to be careful. It can be manipulated in this contest. But at the same time, I also want to emphasize that the US-China contest will bring lots of opportunities for us. And you can see it happening already in the field of trade and investment. And here, the good thing is that ASEAN so far has worked very hard to maintain good ties with the United States and maintain good ties with China. And so, for example, the United States has invested more in the ASEAN countries than it has in China, Japan, South Korea, India combined. Now that's amazing, you know. ASEAN's economy is much smaller, but you have so much more American investment. So it shows you that ASEAN has shown that it is attractive to American investors who are not going to put their money in to ASEAN unless they're going to make money from it. So that's something that ASEAN has done correctly. And at the same time, in terms of trade, what is remarkable is that in the year 2000, US trade with ASEAN was $135 billion, and China's trade with ASEAN was only $40 billion, year 2000. US 135, China 40. But by last year, while US trade with ASEAN had grown significantly from $135 billion to $440 billion, big increase, 3.5 times. But China's trade with ASEAN had grown from $40 billion to $975 billion, almost $1 trillion. And what is shocking is that this is the world's largest trading relationship. China and ASEAN, which are smaller economies, do more trade with each other than the United States does with the European Union, which are much bigger economies. That's amazing. And as a result of this, ASEAN has grown phenomenally. I mean, you know, in the year 2000, when Japan's economy, in the year 2000, Japan's economy was the second largest economy in the world. Japan's economy in the year 2000 was 8 times the size of ASEAN, 8 times. Today, Japan's economy is only 1.5 times bigger than ASEAN. And within 10 years, ASEAN's economy will be bigger than Japan's. That's amazing. It shows that ASEAN has been able to capitalize on this US-China contest to grow and develop. We're not perfect, we make mistakes, but we're succeeding. And fortunately for us, you can be very optimistic for the future of ASEAN because of what I call the new CIA. Now, CIA doesn't stand for Central Intelligence Agency, even though there may be some CIA people in this room, I think. As you know, they're everywhere. But CIA stands for China, India, and ASEAN. And I want to mention CIA so that you understand what a remarkable region we live in. China has a population of 1.4 billion, India has a population of 1.4 billion, ASEAN almost 700 million. You add up the three, it comes to 3.5 billion people. Now, among these 3.5 billion people, in the year 2000, there were only 150 million people in the middle class. Only 150 million out of 3.5 billion in the year 2000. But by last year, the number had exploded 10 times to 1.5 billion. And by 2030, around there, it might hit 2.5 billion. Now, this is the largest explosion of middle class populations anywhere in the world. So we can see what the point here is that while we're going to have this contest that will continue between the US and China, it will have a lot of dangers, but it will also have a lot of opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Kishore. Please do sit down, sir. Young members of Golkar.